A popular activity that millions of people around the world engage in every week is bowling. Today, all the equipment manufacturers and bowling alleys constitute a multi-billion-dollar business. However, this modern pastime has a history that goes back not hundreds of years, but thousands. Learn more about bowling, where it came from, and how it developed on this episode of Everything Everywhere Daily. This episode is sponsored by NerdWallet.
Nerds!
When it comes to general knowledge and history, you know I've got you covered. But who do you turn to when you need smart financial decisions? If your answer is NerdWallet, then you're absolutely right. And if it's not, let me change your mind. The nerds at NerdWallet have spent thousands of hours researching and reviewing over 1,300 financial products. And they have the tools you need to make smarter financial decisions. Looking for a credit card? Go beyond the basic comparisons, filter for features that matter to you, and read in-depth reviews. Ready to choose a high-yield savings account? Get access to exclusive deals and compare rates, bonuses, and more. House hunting? View today's top mortgage rates for your home sweet home. Make the Nerds your go-to resource for smart financial decisions. Head to nerdwallet.com/learn more. NerdWallet. Finance smarter. Disclosure: NerdWallet Compare Incorporated, NMLS 1617539.
What do Mattel, Banana Republic, ButcherBox, and Glossier all have in common? They power their businesses with Shopify. Shopify is the most innovative and scaled commerce platform on the planet that also happens to have the best converting checkout on the planet. And that's no industry secret. That's Shopify. Learn more at shopify.com/enterprise.
If you've been listening to this podcast long enough, you've probably noticed a theme. Many of the things in our modern world actually have ancient roots. And so too is the case with bowling. Bowling is pretty simple when you break it down into its component parts. You roll a ball and knock down some pins. So it should come as no surprise that the origins of what we call bowling can be found in ancient history. The earliest evidence of something that we could identify as a proto-bowling was found in the grave of an Egyptian child in 1895. An archaeologist and Egyptologist by the name of Sir Flinders Petrie was conducting a dig near the city of Naqada, Egypt, and he found items that resembled early bowling equipment. He found a ball, 9 pin-like objects, and a trilithin, which is an object that looks like something from Stonehenge. The objects were dated to 3200 BC, or about 5,200 years ago. The ball and pins were more closely related to the game of Skittles, which is currently played in the UK and Ireland. Early Polynesians had a game known as Ulu Maika. It involved rolling a disc made out of volcanic rock, but the objective was distance, not knocking over pins. One of the earliest records of a game that bore a closer resemblance to modern bowling comes from ancient Germany around the year 300. A religious ceremony involved rolling a stone or a wooden ball to knock down a kegel, a pin that symbolized sin. Successfully knocking down the kegel meant that the bowler was free of sin. Bowling-type games were outdoor activities, and eventually special greens were set up for bowling matches. These bowling games were closer to what we would know as lawn bowling or bowls in England. The object was reaching some target on the ground, not necessarily knocking over pins. The oldest surviving bowling green is in Southampton, England, and it was built in 1299, and it's actually still in use today. By the 14th century, bowling was quite popular in England. King Edward III allegedly banned it for soldiers in 1366 because it was distracting them from their archery practice. In continental Europe, especially in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, bowling was often played indoors with wooden floors and pins. It became popular as a common pastime for all classes of people. Beginning in the 16th century and the Renaissance, bowling began to take a more recognizable shape to the modern game. Henry VIII was said to be an avid bowler, and variations such as 9 pins and Skittles emerged. 9 pins became especially popular in taverns. In Germany, covered facilities that allowed for playing in all conditions were built called Kegelbahns, and these were usually attached to the side of a tavern. Martin Luther was an avid bowler and had a bowling lane built near his home for his family. He supposedly established the number of pins used at 9. Previously in Germany, the number of pins could be anywhere from 3 to 17. Dutch settlers brought their version of bowling, known as kegelen, to North America in the 17th century. This version was played in the settlement of New Amsterdam, and it used 9 pins that were set in a diamond shape. By the 19th century, bowling had evolved in several American cities, particularly amongst the Dutch and German immigrant communities. 9 pins became extremely popular, although it gained a bad reputation due to its association with gambling and crime. The writer Washington Irving explicitly mentioned 9-pin bowling in his 1819 book, Rip Van Winkle. In 1841, 9 pins was banned in several states, leading to a new variation of the game that used 10 pins instead of 9. This change not only circumvented the law, but it also laid the foundation for modern 10-pin bowling. And 10-pin bowling is the most common form of bowling today. The American Bowling Congress, the ABC, was founded in 1895 in New York City. This organization helped standardize the rules and fostered a more organized sport. They replaced the National Bowling Association, which was established 20 years earlier, which had created standardized rules regarding ball size and lane size. The ABC established the modern scoring system for bowling, which was a maximum of 300 points over 12 possible balls, in addition to setting standards for pins and balls as well. Bowling alleys began to appear, often as parts of larger entertainment venues. Other variants of bowling evolved in the eastern United States around this time in the late 19th century, and I will get to those in a bit. Bowling balls were initially made out of wood, often a hardwood called lignum vitae from the Caribbean. However, in 1905, the Brunswick Corporation introduced the mineral-light rubber ball, which replaced most wooden balls. One of the biggest technical innovations in bowling took place in 1952, when the American Machine and Foundry Corporation, also known as AMF, introduced the automatic pin setter. This mechanization revolutionized the sport, making bowling much more accessible and allowing alleys to run more efficiently. Prior to this, pins for each bowling alley had to be set by hand. Bowling alleys literally had people on staff known as pin setters, or the pins would have been connected to strings. There have been organized bowling competitions ever since the establishment of the ABC. However, they only ran tournaments for men. In 1916, the Women's International Bowling Congress was created, and the two organizations merged to form the United States Bowling Congress in 2005. Automatic pin setters made bowling explode in popularity in the 1950s. One of the reasons for bowling's mass appeal was due to television broadcasts, with shows like Championship Bowling in the 1950s and 60s. Professional bowlers became household names and leagues flourished, and this led to the establishment of the Professional Bowlers Association, or PBA, in 1958 by Eddie Elias. It provided a platform for bowlers to compete professionally, and the sport's popularity soared throughout the 1960s and 70s. The PBA created several celebrity bowlers such as Earl Anthony, Pete Weber, Walter Ray Williams Jr., and Mark Roth. Bowling leagues became popular with millions of people participating in competitive amateur leagues every single week. However, the number of leagues and bowlers began to decline in the 1980s and 90s. This was due to changes in entertainment preferences and the rise of alternative sports and leisure activities. To attract younger audiences, many bowling alleys introduced things like cosmic bowling, with glow-in-the-dark lanes, music, and party atmospheres. This evolution helped keep bowling relevant as a social activity rather than as a competitive sport. In 1999, there were 5,400 bowling centers in just the United States. But as of 2022, there were only 2,849. While the number has been steadily falling, it appears to have leveled off since the end of the pandemic, with the number of bowling alleys slightly growing a bit. Before I mention that there were several other variants of bowling that were created in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, and several of those still exist, albeit only in certain regions. One of the most popular variants in Europe is 9-pin bowling. 9-pin bowling goes all the way back to the original 19th century game, where players aim to knock down 9 pins arranged in a diamond shape, as opposed to the 10-pin triangle arrangement used in most bowling alleys. Each player rolls a wooden or composite ball without any finger holes towards the pins, and the objective is to knock down as many as possible, as with 10-pin bowling. In parts of New England and the Atlantic provinces of Canada, you can still find candlepin bowling. Candlepin bowling is a variation of bowling that originated in New England, and it's characterized by its unique pins and smaller balls. The pins, which are tall and narrow with cylindrical shapes, resemble candles, and they're harder to knock down than the wider pins used in 10-pin bowling. The ball used in candlepin bowling is much smaller and lacks finger holes, weighing around 2 to 4 pounds. Players are allowed 3 rolls per frame, unlike the standard 2 and 10-pin, and the pins are not cleared between rolls, adding a strategic element to play. Duckpin bowling is a variation of traditional bowling found in some mid-Atlantic states, played with shorter and stouter pins than 10-pin bowling pins, which makes them resemble ducks, which is where it gets its name. Despite the smaller size, duck pins are harder to knock down due to their shape and weight. The ball and rules of duckpin bowling are similar to that of candlepin bowling. 5-pin bowling is a Canadian variation of bowling that uses 5 pins arranged in a V shape and a smaller ball that fits comfortably in the hand, again without finger holes. Each pin is worth a different point value. The center pin is worth 5 points, the next 2 are worth 3 points, and the outer 2 are worth 2 points each for a total of 15 points per frame. I want to conclude this episode by moving from talking about bowling as an activity and an industry to discussing some of the rarest events in 10-pin bowling. The first is the difficulty of certain splits. In each bowling frame, you have 2 opportunities to knock down pins. If you knock them all down on the first try, it's a strike. It's a spare if you knock them all down in 2 tries. However, what pins are remaining to get a spare can be easy or it can be extremely difficult. One of the most difficult spares is known as the 7-10 split. It's the 2 furthest pins in each corner. An average bowler will find this almost impossible to complete. However, a professional bowler will complete it about 0.7% of the time. However, this is not the most difficult split to pick up. That would be the 4-6-7-9-10 split, also known as the Greek church. This is only picked up 0.2% of the time by professional bowlers. One of the most difficult things to do is to bowl a perfect game. A perfect game is scoring 300 points on 12 consecutive strikes. For an amateur player, a perfect game is rare enough that it might sometimes be published in a local newspaper. Perfect games used to be extremely rare. However, the rate and number of perfect games has steadily increased since 1980. In 2010, over 50,000 perfect games were sanctioned. The bowler with the most perfect games is Pharoah Williams, who reportedly has rolled 135. The reason for the explosion in perfect games is primarily due to technology. Modern bowling balls are designed with highly reactive materials like urethane and resin that give players better grip and control over the ball's spin. This improved ball technology makes it easier to generate powerful hook shots that increase the likelihood of strikes. The oil patterns on lanes have become more standardized, and bowlers now have a better knowledge of how oil patterns affect ball movement. Many bowling alleys use oil patterns designed to guide the ball towards the pocket, making strikes more frequent. Rolling a perfect game is certainly impressive. However, bowling contests are usually conducted in a series of 3 games. So what is truly the rarest feat of all is bowling a perfect 900 series. 3 consecutive perfect games in a row. The first 900 series took place on July 1st, 1982 by Glenn Allison, a former PBA competitor at the La Habra Bowl in La Habra, California. Even though it was in sanctioned league play, the American Bowling Congress refused to recognize the achievement. And today, a small and very vocal group seeks to get his 900 series approved. In fact, the ABC refused to recognize the first 6 900 series that were rolled. The first 900 series that was officially recognized was rolled by Jeremy Sonnefeld in 1997 at the Sun Valley Lanes in Lincoln, Nebraska. He was a member of the highly successful University of Nebraska bowling team. As the number of 300 games has increased, so have the number of 900 series. Since Sonnefeld's first recognized perfect series in 1997, there have been a total of 39 recognized perfect series. Perhaps the most controversial series are the 2 900 series by Robert Mushtair. He supposedly rolled his 2 perfect 900 series in 2005 and 2006 when he was just 17 and 18. And in addition to these, he claims to have done it another time as well. The reason for the controversy is that he claims to have done it in a pre-bowling session for a league where he bowled alone with no witnesses. Bowling has come a long way from its ancient origins as a children's game in Egypt and its use to remit sins in medieval Germany. Despite having decreased in popularity over the last several decades, it is still a multi-billion-dollar industry that is enjoyed by millions of people every week. The executive producer of Everything Everywhere Daily is Charles Daniel. The associate producers are Benji Long and Cameron Kieffer. I want to give a big shout out to everyone who supports the show over on Patreon, including the show's producers. Your support helps me put out a show every single day. And also, Patreon is currently the only place where Everything Everywhere Daily merchandise is available to the top tier of supporters. If you'd like to talk to other listeners of the show and members of the Completionist Club, you can join the Everything Everywhere Daily Facebook group or Discord server. Links to everything are in the show notes.